A private meeting at Highgrove House was supposed to be a moment of healing. Instead, it became the breaking point for a king who had run out of patience. King Charles has reportedly taken the most serious step yet against his youngest son, moving to cut Prince Harry's royal allowance and potentially remove him from the royal inheritance entirely. This decision came after a 7-day visit to the UK that left the monarch humiliated, angry, and finally convinced that his son had gone too far. The drama began when Harry arrived in Britain on July 7 for the Invictus Games 2027 one-year countdown celebrations in Birmingham. The event itself was meant to highlight the work Harry had built for wounded veterans, something his father had always supported. But from the moment Harry landed, the headlines stopped being about the games and started being about the family war that would not end. Harry had requested that his wife Meghan and their 2 children, Archie and Lilibet, travel with him for what would have been their first family visit to the UK in 4 years. The children had not seen their grandfather since the Platinum Jubilee in 2022. Charles was reportedly excited at the prospect of finally spending time with his youngest grandchildren. Then the plans fell apart. Security concerns forced Meghan and the children to stay behind. Harry's request for armed police protection, something he is no longer entitled to as a non-working royal, was rejected by the British government. The family would not be traveling together after all. For Charles, who is battling cancer and knows time is precious, this cancellation hit harder than any public criticism or interview revelation. But the real insult was still coming. In an attempt to provide his son with a secure base during the visit, the king offered Harry accommodation at Buckingham Palace itself. It was a gesture of trust and a practical solution to the security concerns Harry had been so vocal about. The palace claims Harry failed to respond by the deadline. His team later said the accommodation was unsuitable. Then came a last-minute request to accept the offer, but by then the palace says the arrangements could no longer be made. Harry's spokesperson called the situation disappointing and insisted the offer had been accepted then withdrawn. The back and forth was embarrassing for both sides, but it was Harry who came out looking like he had rejected his father's hospitality, then changed his mind too late. Insiders described it as humiliating for the prince. Then came the podcast. While in the UK, Harry sat down with rugby player Joe Marler for an appearance on the We'll See You Now podcast. It was meant to be a light-hearted chat, but it became the moment that changed everything. When asked to state his occupation, Harry said he was a full-time dad, a British Army veteran, a Duke, and a Prince of England. The phrase Prince of England landed like a bomb inside Buckingham Palace. Harry had stepped back from royal duties in 2020. He lived in California. He had made it clear he wanted a private life away from the institution. Yet here he was using the title as if nothing had changed, as if he was still a working member of the family he had chosen to leave. The timing made it worse. Just days earlier, on July 3, Prince William had appeared on NFL star Travis Kelce's podcast. The contrast was impossible to ignore. William talked about football and the World Cup. Harry talked about his trauma, his bullying at school, and described his hair color as sunset auburn rather than ginger. One brother represented the monarchy with dignity. The other seemed to be trying to outshine him by being more personal, more vulnerable, more dramatic. Insiders noted that Harry approached the podcast hosts about appearing, not the other way around. This was not a casual conversation. This was calculated media strategy. And it came at the worst possible moment. The public reaction was swift and brutal. Comments on social media questioned how Harry could describe himself as a Prince of England while living in California, while refusing royal duties, while publicly criticizing the very institution he was now claiming to represent. For King Charles, who had spent years keeping the door open for his son, this was the breaking point. A royal insider told New Idea that Harry's recent behavior was almost the final straw for the king. Charles had been Harry's last remaining champion in the royal family, the one person willing to overlook the Netflix documentaries, the interviews, the books, and the years of public attacks on the institution he led. But now, even Charles had had enough. The king reportedly authorized the removal of Harry's royal allowance, a decision that carries both financial and symbolic weight. Since 2020, most of Harry's funding had come from Charles's hereditary estate, not from taxpayer money. Cutting that off sends a clear message: the family's support, both financial and emotional, is no longer guaranteed. But the talk inside palace corridors goes even further. Courtiers are now speculating that Charles could remove Harry from his will entirely. The king's estate is estimated to be worth around $1.5 billion. Being cut out would not just be a financial blow. It would be a public statement that Harry is no longer considered a true member of the family. Insiders warn that such a move would totally blindside Harry, who still believes his father will ultimately forgive him. Harry, however, has also been facing financial difficulties from other directions. The Australian government has pulled funding from the Invictus Games. Many of the commercial deals that were supposed to secure the Sussexes' financial independence have fallen through. His legal battle against the Daily Mail's publisher was dismissed by the High Court, leaving him potentially facing costs in the region of $80 million. The monthly expenses of maintaining a lifestyle in Montecito are reportedly massive. Harry has been in contact with his father during these struggles. Sources claim he has been very transparent with Charles about how difficult things have become. But within the palace, the reaction has been one of shock and disapproval. Even the courtiers who had been supportive of a renewed relationship are reportedly pushing back. They see this not as a genuine effort to reconcile, but as a self-serving mission driven by financial desperation. Prince William, who has long encouraged his father to take a harder line, is said to be supportive of the new approach. The relationship between the brothers is described as frozen solid. William has reportedly refused to meet with Harry during any of his UK visits, and there are no signs that this will change. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach, is also said to be livid at the situation, unable to bear seeing the royal family toyed with by the constant stream of headlines from America. The tension came to a head during the brief reunion at Highgrove House. Harry, Meghan, and the children finally visited Charles and Camilla on the final days of the visit. It was the first time Charles had seen his daughter-in-law or grandchildren since 2022. The meeting was described as a private family occasion, but the atmosphere was reportedly far from warm. Charles looked at his grandchildren, children he barely knows, and saw what the years of conflict had cost him. He also saw a son who had spent the week creating chaos, generating negative headlines, and reminding the world of every grievance he had ever expressed. The invitation to Highgrove may have been an act of love, but it was followed by a decision born of necessity. The king has reportedly signed off on a formal directive regarding Harry's financial status. The royal allowance, which had been a lifeline to the California-based family, is being reduced or removed entirely. The decision is final, and Charles has reportedly told those closest to him that he cannot continue to fund a lifestyle that comes with so much public criticism and family pain. Harry is said to be devastated by the development. Having believed his father would always be his protector, he is now facing the reality that the king's patience has run out. The financial pressure, combined with the legal setbacks, the public criticism, and now the loss of family support, has left him in a position more precarious than at any point since he left the UK. For the royal family, this marks a turning point. For years, the strategy had been to keep the door open, to offer the possibility of return, to avoid the final break. That strategy has now changed. The king has drawn a line, and Harry is on the other side of it. The $1.5 billion question, whether Harry will ultimately be cut out of the will, may take years to answer. But the removal of the royal allowance sends a clear signal. The financial support that has kept the Sussexes afloat is being withdrawn. The safety net is gone, and Harry is being forced to face the consequences of the choices he has made. There will be no more invitations to Buckingham Palace, no more offers of accommodation, no more private meetings at Highgrove. The family has moved from conflict to cold distance, and for Harry, who has spent years claiming he wanted freedom, the freedom has arrived with a price he may not have expected. Prince William and Princess Anne are reportedly in full agreement with the king's decision. Even Queen Camilla, who had often urged Charles to act more cautiously, has now accepted that the situation cannot continue. The royal family is closing ranks, and Harry is being left outside. In Montecito, the mood is said to be tense. Harry had hoped the UK visit would be a step toward reconciliation. Instead, it has become the moment the final door closed. His father's decision to cut the allowance is more than a financial matter. It is a rejection, a statement that the family no longer trusts him. The podcast appearance that triggered this crisis was meant to be a light-hearted conversation. Instead, it became the proof Charles needed that his son's priorities had shifted too far away from the institution he was born to serve. Harry called himself a Prince of England in an interview. Now he must face what it means to be a prince without the support of his king.